Portfolio company, right? Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, David.
Good evening.
Good evening, David.
Okay. So I'm going to share the PowerPoint. Okay. So today we'll be looking at the measuring the impact of collaborative consultation on practice, assessment, and evaluation strategies. Okay. Now, the presenters will be myself and Mr. James Stryker. We'll be looking on assessment and evaluation strategies. Everyone is hearing me perfectly? Can you hear me?
Yes, your audio is okay.
Okay, good. Okay. So before we start the presentation, I want to let everyone know that what we're looking at is the assessment strategies and the evaluation strategies on the impact of collaborative consultation on inclusive practices. Okay. So the first thing what I want to do is to look at the problem, right, and why this research was necessary. So in most school settings, academic services are delivered separately through the individual efforts of general and special education teachers, right? So if you look in most schools, when you have an inclusive system where you have persons that learn at different rates, or persons that have different academical challenges or behavioral challenges, most time the content teacher operates on their own, and the special education teacher also operates on their own, right? So there is a problem there because the content teacher will be able to deliver, will be master in the content area, while the special education teacher will be able to look at. So what we're putting together, they'll be able to learn from each other. Okay. So this is a classroom that shows a student that is disinterested. And normally a lot of students, when they're disinterested, they tend to have either learning difficulties or sometimes even learning disabilities, right? And with both the content teacher and the special education teacher working together, they are able to rectify these issues. All right. So first thing we want to define, what is collaborative consultation? So collaborative consultation is an interactive communication process that may exist among the general and special educators, administrators, related service personnel, and parents to facilitate the provision of special education services to disabled students in regular mainstream classroom settings, right? Now, when you look on law by legislation, a lot of legislation worldwide is moving to more inclusive schools and moving away from what we used to have where we have pull-out system. So we used to have systems where students would go to a school that is totally for special ed students. But now what the legal system is putting forward is that we should have more inclusive schools, and not only inclusive schools, but inclusive classroom. Because you can have a school that is inclusive, but by streaming, the classrooms are not inclusive. And this can also provide a challenge because students who have challenges will be left out of content. Okay? All right. So this picture shows teachers collaborating. So collaboration is much more than what we know as co-teaching, right? Co-teaching can be two teachers sharing the space in a classroom, but not because they are sharing the space in the classroom means that they are collaborating. Collaborating goes to having time to plan, communicating, okay? And by communicating, because sometimes it can be challenging working with persons who may see things differently, or working with persons who are from different backgrounds. But by collaborating, we are able to look at each other communication style, right? The interpersonal skill, develop the interpersonal skill, which then can foster in terms of better performances of students. Okay, so in this model, we consult, and by consulting, so the purpose of collaborative consultation is to rectify a problem, right? So there is a problem within the classroom. It can be behavioral problem, it can be academical problem, and by working together, most times it's the content teacher and the special ed teacher, but it can also be between different stakeholders. But by working together, the teachers are able to come up with a solution, right? Design a plan, implement the plan, and there is supportive measures there, and to actually evaluate and manage the plan. Why is collaborative consultation important to students? So it says special needs students can access the curriculum. Now, we know that the curriculum is designed for the teacher to teach from the curriculum, right? So it's like a compass. But if the students have certain disabilities, these disabilities prevent them from accessing the curriculum. Now, there is something called equity and equality. So both, if you put students in a classroom that have special needs, they're atypical and typical students, not because they're in the same classroom means that they can access the curriculum, right? Because some students have a disability and put them at a disadvantage. So whatever the needs of those students are, the teacher or the system will have to provide for their need. So it's differentiation based on the need, and that is what we call equity. Improve academic performances. So collaborative consultation will improve academic performances. So professional development is normally geared at the teacher, and the premise is that by improving the teacher, when teacher skills are improved, teacher pedagogy is improved, our teacher content area is improved, then this will go into the classroom and cause an improvement in the students' academic performance. And enhance discipline and support for teachers who may have difficulty managing the behavior of disruptive students. Now, there is a type of consultation model, right? It's called the instructional model. And with the instructional model, it's where the teachers that are struggling in terms of instructional skills or even challenges in terms of behavioral challenges like classroom management, they can go in the consultation process with a consultant, and they may be able to provide methods that they could implement in the classroom to rectify this. And it creates equity in the classroom, thus ensuring that needs of all students are being met. So the inclusive classroom, as I said, it is not to just bring in students with disabilities in the classroom, but to ensure that when you're bringing the students into the classroom, you are catering for each and every need. So you cannot give the students the equality, you have to give them equity. Based on what they need, that is what we have to provide for them. So this is an inclusive classroom. And if you can look, this type of teaching is called co-teaching, right? This is co-teaching. So there's different stations there. And this would be a stationary type of co-teaching. And for a stationary type of co-teaching, it's important that teachers have collaboration. They spend time talking to each other, communicating, so that they can know what they're going to do when they enter the classroom. Why is collaborative
consultation important to students? One of the major outcomes of collaborative consultation is to provide comprehensive and effective program for students with special needs within the most appropriate context, enabling them to achieve maximum constructive interaction with the peers who are not handicapped. So for example, a student that have a person that has autism, right? An autism disorder is not a disorder of, say, for example, your ability to reason. An autistic disorder is a disorder where persons are, it's a social disorder. So by you putting a person that is autistic in a regular classroom, they will learn to model off their peers and learn social skills. Why is it important? Why is collaborative consultation important to teachers? It improves communication skills, right? So by working together, you will have to listen. So there are certain skills that is important in communication. One of them is listening, right? One of them is responding and giving feedback. So by you collaborating, it builds your communication skills, because if the process is going to be effective, your communication skill has to be very effective. It fosters professional growth since both parties are experts in their area, thus knowledge and best practices can be shared. So for example, a special education teacher, they are most times skilled in pedagogy, how to teach persons that have learning disabilities or they have certain difficulties. But a content teacher is normally specialized in their area. So by both of them working together, they can learn from each other, and by that way, they grow professionally. Produce a solution that are different from those that the individual team members would produce independently. We always say 2 minds are better than 1. So no one person look at things the same way. So by working together, you are now able to see things from a different perspective. And it can aid with classroom management skills. All right. So what is an inclusive education, right? Inclusive education is an approach to schooling in which students with many different kinds of disabilities and learning needs are educated in classes with non-disabled and typical developing students. In an inclusive arrangement, students who need additional support and services spend most of their time with their non-disabled peers rather than in separate classrooms in schools. Okay, so this shows a picture where you can see persons with different disabilities, and some persons, they don't have any disability, but they would be in the same classroom. And in this way, this is a better system because nobody is like stigmatized, right? And they can all learn from each other. All right. Now, to investigate the impact of collaborative consultation, as on an inclusive classroom, a research will have to be conducted, right? Now, this research could be done using a quantitative, qualitative, or mixed method. Now, when you initially look at such a topic, right, the impact of collaborative consultation on inclusive classroom, you would want to think that it is quantitative, right? So how you design your research will determine the assessment tool that you're using. This research could be done in a quantitative manner, where you could use, for example, pre-test, post-test assessment. It could also be used in qualitative, where you're looking at something like more description, and it could also be using both skills. So for example, if I want to measure how collaborative consultation impacts inclusive classroom, then I could look on a cause-effect relationship or a correlation, right? And if I want to look at qualitative, I could look at how do students in an inclusive classroom, how do they feel when they are taught by teachers that are involved in consultation and collaboration, right? And the research design will determine the type of assessment tool that is used. So Mr. Stryker will take over from here.
All right. Good evening, educators. Just kindly confirm that you guys are hearing me loud and clear.
Good evening. Yes, we are.
All right, thank you for the feedback. All right, so I'm gonna start off with assessment, and then I'm gonna take you through a series of assessment strategies that can be used to assess the impact of collaboration on inclusive classroom. And so I would like to start off by saying, what is assessment? And so assessment is a process. And basically, if we look at it in an education context, it's a process that seeks to inform a teacher or whoever the assessor is of the educational status of students relative to some goals or objectives that they were part of in some educational experience. And so in a nutshell, that's what assessment is. It's not just an instrument, it's a process. All right. David, I'm not sure if you want me to share my screen so I can switch on my cue. Your microphone's muted. I'm not sure if you're hearing me.
Yes, Trevor.
Yeah, you can stop sharing and I will share so that I
Okay.
can switch as I go along. All right, good, cool. All right, you guys are seeing my screen now? All right. So just as a confirmation quickly that you guys are seeing my screen.
Yes, we are.
All right, and so we spoke about assessment, and another concept that some people use interchangeably is evaluation, but the two can be different. And so basically, evaluation is basically the part of the process where we're going to state the worthiness of the data that was collected. This is where we make judgment of the data collected basically. And so here we say it refers to a periodic process of gathering data and then analyzing it or ordering it in such a way that the resulting information can be used to determine how effective your teaching program is and the extent to which it is achieved its stated objectives and anticipated results. So like I alluded to earlier, it's about now comparing. It's the simplest way I can put it is like comparing the outcome with the learning intention. So what you intended initially and what you get out, and now we're gonna make a judgment as to what extent or how worthy the information is. And so if we jump straight into the different strategies that we can use to assess the impact of collaboration on inclusive education, the first one I'm going to touch on is the pre and post test design. And here we're actually doing a research here. And so what typically happens, we do a pre-test where this pre-test allows us to establish equivalency. And when I say equivalency, I'm talking about we're having two groups. We're having an experimental group and a control group. And so from the get-go, the main objective of that pretest is to say, okay, before any amount of intervention was done, these two groups was basically performing equivalently. Let's use that word. And so we have our intervention, where of course the experimental group is exposed to, well, in this case, we'll be doing the collaboration. So we're having, let's say we have two inclusive classrooms. One classroom is going to benefit from learning experiences that was facilitated by collaboration, which we call the experimental group, and another classroom, which will just maybe have the special needs teacher doing their thing. We'll call that the traditional or the control group. And so both groups will be pre-tested just to see, because we want to ensure that from the jump, we don't have one group performing better than the other. And so once the pre-test is done and we do our analysis, and the analysis, the statistics say to us that these two groups are performing statistically the same, we go ahead, you do your intervention. Maybe the intervention lasts 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 month. And then after that period is finished, we do a post-test. And then again, we compare the two results to see if the means basically are statistically different. And typically with this design, we use the inferential statistic t-test. That basically allows us to ascertain if two means are statistically significant. And so that's the essence of the pre and post test approach. And so so we have a diagram just to be more clear here. So we have the treatment group, or the experimental group, which will be the group that benefit from an experience after collaboration. And we have the control group, which maybe is just the special needs teacher, or as my colleague alluded to earlier, more than one adult in the building, but they're probably just doing co-teaching rather than collaboration. So we have the treatment, and then we have the post-test. The other one I want to come to is we can do a survey. And actually, when it comes to survey, two main instruments that we use in surveys will be the questionnaires and the interviews. And so depending on our students, the level of them, we might need to decide, because every classroom will be different, which instrument will be best suited for them. So because the questionnaire is where you would give them, they would respond and then return that back to you. Maybe in that classroom, you can do some reading so that they are clear on the questions they have to respond to. Where on the other hand, the interview is where you basically ask questions and you would do your recording. But the survey I want to touch on for this slide would be the cross-sectional survey. And here we're going to collect data at one point. So what this does, it allows us to ascertain the current opinion, the current attitude, the current practices that is happening. And so also, let's say we wanna know what are the students' beliefs of this whole collaborative, because they will be experiencing it. We can do a survey, a cross-sectional survey, to find that out. And like I said, with the cross-sectional, that happens at one point. Now, the other survey is the longitudinal survey, which would be done over a period of time. And with the longitudinal survey, they have different types as well. We can look at the panel one, and that basically says we're going to be assessing the same group throughout. And so how this applies, sometimes your intervention might not be seen right in the cross section. That's at one point. You would have implemented something, and it may be it's a long term. It will have long-term effects. And so if you would have had such an intervention, then the longitudinal approach would be better, because here, what this would allow you to do, this would allow you to check maybe, let's say it's a middle school, over the entire 3-year period. And I have a diagram here. So the same group, so with the panel, it is the same population that we're going to be testing at different times. All right, so time one, maybe when they're in let's say, let's use grade 7. You do a check. You can do another check, grade 8. You can do another check, grade 9. The interval that you will use will depend on maybe how much time you have. Let's just put it that way, because sometimes maybe you are doing it for a study and it's over 2 years. All right. Maybe it's a personal experiment and you have the time to stretch it out for the entire school period. That's fine. We can have longitudinal study. You're doing a check every 5 months. So all of that is possible with that. And so a more in-depth approach that we could have is face-to-face or personal interviews. And just as that one say, as seen here, it can be very labor intensive, but with this, we can really achieve high quality data. Now, most times, to simplify stuff and to make things researchable, researchers opt for structured interviews, but we can also have these open interviews, and there's an advantage to that because you ask a question, you're there, you're able to read the mood, the body language, and that would allow you to now ask follow-up questions, just to fine-tune information. But with the structured interview, you will have a case whereby it's based on the predetermined questions that you would have set out in your interview. And so, of course, this again will be able to collect data, and actually this could actually be part of your survey, whether it be longitudinal or cross-sectional. All right. And so this is just a simple picture of the whole interview process and the face-to-face interactions, and we know all of the advantage that comes with that as opposed to maybe doing a questionnaire. All right, you're facing them, you stand a chance of getting even more credible information. Sometimes it's with questionnaire, people just provide social answers that are socially acceptable. All right, with the interview, you're facing them, you're seeing them, and then even with the type of students that we are discussing, the interview really allows you to really be versatile to meet their different needs. All right, and of course we have what we call observations. Observations can also be structured. And here we can create a simple thing like a checklist. We can have a checklist, and the researcher or the teacher is observing the students in their natural environment, and based on if the behaviors satisfy the checklist, we can now probably pick present, not present, yes, no. Well, it depends on the characteristics of the instrument that you would have designed. And of course, if you would have implemented during the collaborative process, the team decide that this is what we're gonna try. We're gonna see how this is gonna work, because sometimes we don't have all the answers, and hence the reason why we research. And so with the observation now, so we decided that this is what we're gonna try. And so of course, that is gonna form the basis of the items on the checklist. And so you'll be able to do your check off. And so that's how the observation aspect can be used to gather data for the collaboration aspect. And so here we just have a quick image of, yeah. And the other one I want to quickly touch on is case studies or narratives. And here, well, the word narrative comes from the word narrate, which basically talks about telling a story. And so when we talk about the case study and the narratives, now the thing with the case study is that it allows us to have in-depth information. It can be on a single individual, or it can be on a group. Sometimes in the class, there is one specific child, right, that may have a unique set of needs, and you may want to do the other interventions you may have, it's working for everybody, but this one specific child, maybe let's refer to the child as an outlier. And so the case study will allow us to be able to get in-depth information, because with the case study, we can incorporate observations, we can incorporate interviews, and a range of instruments just to get an in-depth understanding of this child. Right? And the last bit I'm going to touch on how we can assess the impact would be performance metrics. And when we speak on performance metrics, we're basically talking about, we can look at student enrollment, graduation rate, student achievement, disciplinary incidents. And so we're going to use that data. So again, we have this class, we have this intervention being done. We know how many students were enrolled. We see how many students graduate. We can look at their achievement, and also we can look at the disciplinary incidents, and looking at all of that together will give us a holistic approach on the impact of collaboration in the inclusive classroom. All right? And this slide just gives a visual on what I just discussed. So I'm gonna pause here and allow Davian to take over.
Okay. Some technical difficulties. All right, you guys can hear me? So basically, we have come to an end, and I would just want to conclude and say that whenever in education and any other system, whenever you are implementing a program, right, or when you're implementing a strategy, you want to see how effective your program is or your strategy is, right? And so you want to see the impact that it is having on your research, or the impact that it is having, right? Now, basically, to find out the impact that your program or your strategy is having, you have to design a tool of assessment, an instrumentation of assessment, right? And this assessment is basically like a test, and that test can be used based on the scores are based on the data collected. It can be used to evaluate, to say, okay, then this strategy is working, or no, this strategy is not working. And by seeing if the strategy is working, then you would continue using the strategy. But if the strategy is not working, then you would have to go back to the drawing room, the collaboration room. And this is the purpose of consultation and collaboration. So you have to go back to the collaboration room and do some adjustment, and then try something else and implement a different strategy. Okay? So we have come to the end of our presentation, and we are now open to take answers, Sorry, open to take questions.
Okay, so I have a question. By the way, very good presentation from both of you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I noticed that in your presentation, you speak about the collaboration or partnership between teachers and special education specialists, but I didn't hear you speak anything about.
Hello.
Are you hearing me?
Yes. Yeah, yes. Go ahead.
Oh, you didn't hear the question. I was saying
No,
that,
go ahead. Sorry about that.
right, I was saying that I noticed that you spoke about the partnership between teachers and special education specialists. So I'm
Right.
asking you, can you explain the role of school administration in this process or in this collaborative experience?
That's an excellent question, because while conducting the research, one of the things that stood out was that the collaborative process is not really effective unless administrators play a crucial role in the collaboration process, right? And one of the problems that was identified is that the administrators of many schools, they do not allot time for the consultation process. So even though sometimes you may have a special education teacher coming into the classroom, if the special education teacher and the content teacher, if there's no collaboration, then the effort would not be successful. Okay. So one of the roles that the administrators could do is allot time for consultation and to ensure that the schedule time on the timetable for both parties to be able to meet. Any other questions? Any questions from my audience? So, since there is no other question, we will close off this webinar.
I have one question, Mr. Magashin.
Oh, go ahead.
So my question is, when you spoke about the inclusion teacher, the EC teacher, and the content era teacher,
Right.
that what advice would you have to an EC teacher who might give the excuse of not knowing the content in order to effectively assist the content teacher?
Hope I'm analyzing the question correctly. Mr. Strike, you want to answer that one?
I heard EC teacher. I just want to be very clear on what the
Like the special education teacher?
All right, good. So thanks. Just repeat the
Right.
question
So
for me.
what
Thank you.
advice would you give to that teacher if it is that they might use the excuse of not knowing the content? So how could they work collaboratively together to effectively help students in the classroom?
All right. So I would say, well, first, that's where the role of the administrator that my colleague touched on come into play. One, we have the time. The administrator first aid the meeting by ensuring that the allotted time is there. And then at these meetings, one of the first things we're going to do as educators is look at or have an idea of our students. Most times we have profiles, we know who's on IEP and these different kind of things, and there's still a curriculum to deliver. And so the collaboration involves look with the different persons would involve looking at the content area, and the content teacher in that collaborative process, their main role would be to ensure that, okay, this is the concept, this is what they need to do, this is what they do next. Just ensure that everything is working in unison, and then the special education teacher who would have all the different facts on, okay, the different challenges that the students would have, they would assist with the pedagogy part of it. And so the collaboration process alone would smooth out the whole issue of feeling not up to par with your content.
Okay,
let-
thank you so much.
Let me add also that sometimes, all right, based on both parties being in the classroom, sometimes the special education teacher don't really have to like know the content or master the content, because there are different type of co-teaching, and if they can spend time in collaboration, then they could basically assess the situation and see which co-teaching method would be best. So for example, there are 6 types of co-teaching method, and based on one of the person, you have situations where both persons are specialists, like like content teacher, and they are in the same classroom. But in the situation where you have a content specialist and a special educator, you could actually choose a method where one teach and one assist. Or you could have something, for example, like if it's a behavioral problem, or you have a classroom where some of the students are fast and some are slower, you could use something called an alternative method, where you have a small group that maybe you enrich that group based on if they're fast, but if they're slow, you can pre-teach them, and then you have a larger group that the content specialist could pay attention to.
I love that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, seeing that there are no more questions, we will close off this section, and I want to tell everyone thanks for coming out and for all the questions that you guys have put forth. Okay, I see one more hand. Go ahead, Nashana. Nashana? Okay. So,
Douglas, you have your
Hello,
hand up.
good, yes.
go ahead.
Good evening.
Good
So
evening.
I joined late. I apologize for that.
Okay, that's
But
okay.
I gather that you were speaking about blending persons who are at different levels.
Right.
Can you just go over how you would deal with a gifted child in a class that is slow?
Well, as I said that, all right, for a person that is gifted, you could do enrichment. So you could have a special education teacher actually assisting that student separately, or you could also have differentiated lesson. So you could actually teach, say for example, you're teaching diffusion, right? But diffusion may have a more complex part. The student that is advanced, you could let them do the advanced diffusion, while the students that are basically slower in terms of learning, you could let them do like diffusion, but as a more simpler complex. So level 1 diffusion and level 3. So in that way, the person that is accelerated don't get bored. But saying all of this, it takes a lot of planning. It takes a lot of time, a lot of planning, and this is where the administration needs to be supportive.
Okay. Thank you for your answer.
All right, you're welcome. Okay. All right. So, any more questions? If not, we will end this forum. I want to thank Mr. James Stryker for taking the time, right, from his busy schedule. And I want to thank everyone for coming out this evening. And I greatly appreciate the questions that were asked. Thanks, everyone, and have a good day.
You're welcome. You too.
All right, bye.
Bye.